Our next guest is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Played in a number of Super Bowls, 8 Pro Bowls, was a first-team All-Pro as well. He's also an NFL analyst for CBS. Our friend James Lofton joining us this morning on the show. James, good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man.
Is it cold back there?
Oh, my goodness. It's so cold, and it's going to snow as well back here in New York.
Well, I have some ice on my knee right now, if that's any comfort.
So coming up this weekend in the NFC Championship game, we got 2 backup quarterbacks. Now, Case Keenum's been the starter all season long, but obviously he didn't start the season that way, and neither did Nick Foles. You played with a guy in Frank Reich that took over for a future Hall of Famer and actually had a couple of unbelievable efforts. What does it take a backup quarterback mentality to be to walk in and really own that huddle, even when it wasn't him who was tabbed as the starter?
I think, first off, he has to have the physical skills, because while you're the backup quarterback, you're also the, quote, scout team quarterback. So you're going up against your starting defense every day. So those guys have to respect you, and that respect then bleeds over into the offense, which, you know, you've earned the right to be there. And you just have to have that respect in the locker room, where everybody's not on pins and needles worried about the fact that you're about to play the game and the starter's unavailable for that game or for the next couple of games or for the rest of the season, if that's the case.
You had played in a number of huge playoff games and a number of Super Bowls, and you were in tight situations with that Bills offense. Now, let's go back to the NFC game with the Vikings and Case Keenum and Minnesota needing to at least try to get into field goal range, but it turning into Stephon Diggs going and taking it to the house. In that huddle, with that few seconds to go, knowing you need a big play, what's the quarterback-receiver relationship like?
Well, it's not so much the quarterback-receiver relationship. It's really about executing the play that's called. And they ran the same play on both sides. They had 2 receivers to each side. They ran a high-low combination where the low guy was going about 12 yards to the outside and the deep guy was going about 20 to 25 yards to the outside. And they're trying to catch the ball on the boundary and get out of bounds. That's exactly what they're trying to do. The defense knows it. I knew it. Everybody watching the game knew it. You didn't have a chance with 10 seconds to play to catch the ball over the middle. Even if you were to slide down, you wouldn't be able to run up and spike the ball and stop the clock in time unless you had a team full of Usain Bolts. So they have to get out of bounds. That's the only way for them to kick a field goal with maybe 1 or 2 seconds on the clock. The Saints just played it poorly. You're looking at the ball, you're looking at the receiver, you're worried about, I don't want to interfere with them, got to keep them in bounds, and then you whiff on the tackle.
It was one of the biggest whiffs ever in Marcus Williams, and I don't know how he's ever going to live it down. How do you think his teammates will respond to him moving forward? Obviously, that's the end of their season, but how about moving forward next year?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you do live it down. You know, just like the Atlanta Falcons carried the burden of losing the big lead to the New England Patriots in last year's Super Bowl, that's always there. It's always the second line in the article that's written about you, or the second line in the article that's written about your team. So they're going to carry that burden for a while, just like you carry a championship with you for the rest of your career. You wear that, and you just got to go out and play beyond it, if that's the case.
James Lofton, the NFL on CBS Pro Football Hall of Famer. As we look ahead to the Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles, last week the Eagles didn't have to do much offensively to get past the Atlanta Falcons 15-10. What do you think about the matchup of Nick Foles trying to go up against the best defense in football with the Vikings?
Well, we move outside, and elements now become a big factor. If you can just close your eyes, you go back to Atlanta versus Philadelphia, and every once in a while you see somebody slip. Think about playing inside the U.S. Bank Stadium with New Orleans and Minnesota. I don't think I saw a player slip at all. Great footing, 72 degrees, everything perfect, all perfect conditions to play football in. Now you put the elements in it, and it becomes a different game. That ball that's easy to grip inside is now rock hard when you play outside. Is there going to be some precipitation? Is the field going to be, like I said, is the field going to be wet? Is it going to be slippery? Is it going to be windy? all these things now come into play, and they change the tenor of the game.
What does it say about the final three of the final four teams, that three of them are built on the strength of their defense, when we're kind of told and taught that this is an offensive-laden league? You need great quarterbacking to win, and offense is the most important part of the puzzle. What does it say that three of our final four teams are actually defensive teams?
Well, when you go from 32 down to the 12 playoff teams, every playoff team has strengths and weaknesses. And their apparent strengths going forward in the last three out of the four teams, you say, well, everybody's good defensively. There's not a team that's not good defensively. There's not a team that's given up 30 points per game every time they turn around. Yes, there are teams that don't have the explosive offense that the New England Patriots seem to be able to demonstrate year in and year out, but they're all good offensively in spurts, and they're good at taking care of the football. I had a chance to do 6 Jacksonville games this year. They wanted to take care of the football. They wanted to play to their, quote, strength in their defense, and they wanted to run the football. And so they had T.J. Yeldon, Chris Ivory, and, of course, Leonard Fournette to be able to run the football, to just pound it, and to try and not make mistakes. And the one thing about Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, because I think he's the quarterback that's going to be under the biggest microscope going forward, because you look at his defense and you say, well, that defense could certainly win championships, and listen to them talk. They'll tell you that they can certainly win a championship.
Yeah.
But if he can play a game where he can throw for 275 yards and 2 touchdowns and not turn the ball over and run the ball like he does occasionally to pick up a first down, could they beat New England? We'll see on Sunday.
James Lofton joins us, Pro Football Hall of Famer from the NFL on CBS. So let's go back to your 1990 run with the Buffalo Bills, because you guys had been to the playoffs the year before but lost to Cleveland. And then in 1990, you win 2 games and get to the Super Bowl. You have to learn something about yourself as you go through it for the first time, getting to an AFC Championship game and a Super Bowl. What do you think the Jaguars are learning about themselves now that they've won their first 2 playoff games?
Well, you go back to that Buffalo Bills team, and they had lost in the AFC Championship game the year prior to losing to Cleveland in Cincinnati. So, you know, here's the team that had started a playoff run and was in the 3rd year of it. Last year, the Jags won 3 games. So this is all new for them. When they got to 10 wins and they were 10-4 and they had kind of sewn up the AFC South, then they floundered the last 2 games. They went out, they lost to the San Francisco 49ers, to Jimmy Garoppolo. They lose the last regular season game. They allow the Tennessee Titans, their arch rival, to get into the playoffs by losing to them. And then they have to catch their breath. And they do it 10-3 over the Buffalo Bills, and then they do it in big fashion against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they're kind of riding high because defense, they made a few plays last week, but they didn't make all the plays that they wanted to make. So they're kind of hungry. Offense is feeling a little bit good about themselves. There was some diversity in what they were able to do. They were able to run the ball and throw the ball. So they're feeling pretty good about themselves. So I think they go in with a chip on their shoulder because that's the way they play defensively all year long. The one thing that I caution them about, and I caution Jacksonville, snap to the whistle. That's all you have to play. They do a lot of yapping afterwards. They do a lot of pushing and shoving, and they do accumulate those personal fouls that are totally unnecessary, that against a good team will just run you out of the building.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you a coaching question. Josh McDaniels looks like he's going to take the Indianapolis Colts job. What do you think about the matchup or the marriage between McDaniels and Andrew Luck? Can that work?
I think anybody coaching Andrew Luck kind of works. Unfortunately, he was injured the last year and a half, so that kind of set him back a little bit. But super talented guy, and all in about football, just like Josh McDaniel is.
James Lofton from the NFL on CBS did a wonderful job all season long alongside Andrew Catalon and the rest of the NFL on CBS team. You also have, of course, seen him with huge plays in the NFL playoffs and beyond as a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Follow him on Twitter at Lofton80. James, it's always a pleasure to catch up, man. Thanks so much. Enjoy the football this weekend.